This 3-day thing was a stitch-up, and Chalmers outed himself when asked about increased taxes when he said, well, that's a matter for Cabinet. I can tell you, get set for a poorer retirement on less money.
But if we want to get our budget deficit under control on a sustained basis, and if we want to boost productivity on a sustained basis, we need to get the government out of the way.
Our tax system is imperfect, and one of its most troubling imperfections is best seen through an intergenerational lens.
And make no mistake, intergenerational lens means he's looking at your super and your investments. That's what he's looking at. Now,
taxing the rich and giving it to the poor won't solve your problem. You know, I must say, for the first time in 37 years I've been in business, you really do, with very successful people, a great sense of anxiety and fear. What we find today is most of the phone calls or people I have discussions with, whether they've got 5 million or 500 million, is the first thing is what structure is the best? What structure am I in now? How can I improve my structure? And how easy is it to transition to the best structure? And the best structure is obviously it protects the asset from creditors, and also that's tax efficient. And the second question is, that comes to me now, is not so much when you've got the structure right, is what investments do we buy and what investments do we divest from, meaning bonds, treasuries, gold, digital currency, a better play now than holding a large commercial property, for example. So it's the structure, but also the instruments. So there's a massive shift. When you've got productivity, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, you don't need to worry about that because you've got so much money coming in. When you don't have that money coming in, that's when you get, it's a bit like when you've got a vacant property or a vacant area, crime escalates, and that's what's happening here. You've got no productivity, no waterfall, and therefore it's about, well, what can we take? So when you've sold off a large amount of the assets, the commodities from Australia, the productivity needs to come from services and the ability with people for their inventiveness and innovation and creativity. Well, all that creativity and inventiveness now and talent is going to the United States. It's going to California, LA, Austin, Texas, and those, Silicon Valley, of course, and those areas. So, and why that is because not only is the talent driven to that because they've got other like-minded people, but all the capital you attract capital far easier in the United States. For example, even in my own career, it's probably 20, 25 times easier when you've got a great idea to, you can pick your partners in the US. So when you've got money follows management. In Australia, they're begging for money, and the ideas, most of the ideas here, you don't see a lot of great ideas in business. I see a lot, as I said before, probably 300 deals a year, and I probably get involved with 5 that make sense. So not only that is the talent, but also that the bank of capital is where the action is, and the action's in America. The problem you've got in this country is that you can't afford, they can't afford to raise company taxes. Company taxes aren't even competitive now. From 30 to 25 over 50 million, the US now is sitting at 21. And so the company corporate rate, we start at the top, is not attractive. The governance is a positive, but also there's a lack of appetite to plough capital into Australia, unlike it was 10 years ago with the Chinese, money from Hong Kong and Chinese, and Singapore was phenomenal. I was involved in billions of dollars coming in through SIVs many years ago. That now's dried up. The Chinese and the Hong Kong money, Singapore money have packed up their bag and gone elsewhere. But that's the trying to compensate that for low tax base. You've got 15.9 million taxpayers and 27.9 million people in the country. Reducing the tax, they're far better off to focusing on productivity and have a more of an entrepreneurial attitude, and give concessions and grants to business, not only what we have here, but also inviting that into the country. Taxing the rich and giving it to the poor won't solve your problem. That won't incentivise. I mean, key word being incentivise and motivation. I think you can't coach motivation, but robbing from the rich and giving to the poor won't work. It's never worked. The whole idea is to embrace the wealthy with the poor and try to work together and create back a middle class which is now almost dissipated. Australia was known for that. And so smart thinking would be to embrace the poor, the middle class and the wealthy to work together and unite and create something, an improved product or service. And you don't see that here because the incentive is, well, it's all too hard now. We've got poor people, middle class, the wealthy have got the money, let's come after them. We worked out 5 years ago, before COVID, that the Centrelink payroll for Social Security and the policing of Social Security can be reduced by $2.9 billion per year, saving back to the government by just giving everyone a pension over 65, irrespective of how much money they've got. Work that out. So whether if you're 65, if you've worked here, met the requirements, you haven't just flown in from the UK last year, but you've met those requirements, and whether you've got 300,000, 1.1 million as a couple where it cuts off through the tiering rates, or 10 million, you get a government pension. And that's a saving. So there's other ways to assess that. So I'd start with that, because that's an immediate saving of just under $3 billion. The Taxation Office has $4.9 billion in payroll. Now, further papers have been done. If we applied what Elon Musk did to the Federal Reserve and federal government and Social Security system, we believe the taxation revenue would be 1.7 billion in year one drop saving. With artificial intelligence now and data matching, there's less need for human intervention. So before you start, and the problem why the government won't do that, of course, because then we've got savings back for government, but then we've got another 120 million people that are unemployed. 120,000 people, pardon me, 120,000 people that are unemployed. So you've got to deal with that. And so you save the money, but then the tax base goes from, you've got more unemployed people. So when you look at efficiency, we're all moving towards efficiency and want to be doing things better, cheaper and faster. And technology is, it's so exciting. But at the same time, a lot of people are concerned about how obsolete they will become in their vocations. So I honestly believe the focus and the think tank and the brains trust should be really focusing on how much more productive we can be. What can we do to produce money rather than trying to produce money and invest and be inventive rather than and cut costs at the same time rather than take and redistribute. On a scale of you know, 1 being conservative and 10 being aggressive, or 10 being at the most extreme, I think Australia is sitting at, you know, probably a 5 or a 6 because it doesn't have the productivity. Running this nation now, given what they did with the Chinese and a lot of the mining grants, you know, we need more capital in this country. We need more capital. Now, to do that is that the investment opportunities. Well, what are the investment opportunities? What are the appetites to come? What is the appetite to come into this country? Well, 15 years ago it was the Chinese, because they'd come in there and they'd go and buy apartment buildings. 15, 20, 30 years ago. Central equity, a lot of the majors, all run by Asians. You know, 30 years ago, housing, let's go and build not 20 apartments, let's go and build 400 on one block. And then let's take the view, let's go and build 30 of them. Melbourne, Sydney, Queensland, been very successful. And that solved a problem. But what it did is it brought a lot of money into Australia. Now, to attract that kind of money, you need to have great tax concessions, and you need to have ideas that are going to invite that kind of capital. Money follows management. So, you know, if I was running this, I'd say, well, we've got a housing problem and we need capital. We've got a material problem. So we should be embracing the Chinese, embracing the costs, embracing the capital. Banks are caught with APRA of what they can do. There's limitations there, but they're open for business. And if we had a housing problem, the government said, Paul, you solve the problem. Well, I'd tap Japan, Singapore alone, and that would be enough. Perhaps the US for a solution to go and build 800,000 properties inside of 3 years. But the condition would be, I'll only do it if I have a clear path for planning. So you've got to give me the power of God to walk on water and to get a planning certificate in 4 to 5 months, and no red tape, no brown carding statutory planners, town planners, and give me the certificate on a complying application. I'll get the money and get the planning through, but so to sell that story to the Japanese and Singaporean, they'll come down, but only if you put on a show. You've got to put on a show. And that's why, you know, a great analogy, 51.5 million people go through Las Vegas a year. 51 million, twice our population. Turns out they put on shows. And there's lights, it's entertaining, and now it's even accommodating for kids. They've got that system worked out. So if you think like Las Vegas, the attraction, I don't gamble, but I go there from time to time with friends. That's what you need to do. You need to bring back Viva Las Vegas. That's what you need to do. That's the kind of attraction that's going to bring in money. And I know a lot of people have been to Las Vegas, but that place never stops. Right now, if you're talking from a taxation point of view and singing in the same hymn sheet as the taxation office, and that family trusts today, discretionary trusts outside of super, there's a tax protection mechanism there, and also tax benefits. But for as far as trust structures is probably the next cab off the rank, and from asset protection, and also for the discretion to be able to distribute income. Outside of that, for the average Australian, there's not much left. And most assets you'll find. What you've got to remember, I think, that most people today, middle class, will have a home, and the home will be in joint names. And if one of the individuals, whether the husband or wife, are in business, it'll be, if the husband's in business, that the home will be in the wife's name. And so that's about as far as it goes. Family trusts, discretionary trusts, and superannuation. Now you're getting to the stage now where people are looking at now what are the opportunities abroad. and that's it's involved, and depending on how much you've got, and if there's visa issues and residential issues you've got to consider as well. But outside of that, generally, now people are concerned because it's almost like they've walked into the lion's den. You know, the government's talked about protection super, retirement savings, becoming financially independent, and which is a good thing, and trust structures to legally minimise and redistribute taxes. Now, the assets are 12 to 13 times of what they were 30 years ago, and now it's, oh, we haven't got any productivity, we haven't got any lights and attraction for capital, so but we do have a war chest over there of real estate being the backbone of the economy. It turns out there's $4.2 trillion of capital. Yeah, we might go and knock on their door, I think. And that's why. And why is that? Because it's easier.
But people have a right to feel cheated in this.
Betrayed, cheated and betrayed. Yeah. So absolutely. What does that do to a nation? What does that do to culture? So that hasn't happened in the States. That hasn't happened in America. And they've got the middle class in America have not progressed in 100 years. Not progressed in 100 years. So they've got a bigger problem, but they haven't, with the tax system, we've got such a low base. I've got friends of mine in Singapore, bankers, good friends of mine that I went to Melbourne with, and they look at Australia like you and I look at Bali. That's how they see it. It's a nation, a nanny nation now, and yeah, who's going to Australia now? We'll go there for the sun, but there's plenty of other places for sun. Turns out it's not the top 10 beach anymore. Tax system's lousy. Things are slow. Can't build anything. Regulatory system's good and the education system's good. But then what? So we educate them and then they leave. They leave. So it's become sort of a portal in the sun, down under, good for a stopover and a stay, but I can't plan my life and career there. I reckon that's the narrative. That's how I see it.